Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fear Diaries. So if this is your first time joining me, welcome. Thanks for being here. Just a little introduction. My name is Cassie Mendez. I'm a shamanic healer and owner of the Spirit Within. And the Fear Diaries I created as a space for us to come together and just sort of really get to know our fears and dive into them together, and just get to know ourselves. Our fear in our life is there for a reason, right? It's there, and when we try to tuck it away and ignore it, it just lingers, right? So, with each episode, my intention is to sort of dive into these little fears that might come up. I know they come up in my life. As I share them, it's really a sort of telling of my own life, of what's going on with me in the moment, and sharing it in hopes that maybe it can help you recognize your own and, feel safe to start exploring your own fears and getting to know them as well. So today's topic is about worry. And, this is something, I won't say that it's something new in my life. In fact, it's something that I'm just starting to recognize, right? We don't know, or maybe know is not the right word. We can't begin to work through and transform our fears and move past them until we actually recognize that there's a problem. That something just isn't right in our lives, right? And, for me, I've come to realize that worry sort of makes an appearance in my life, especially in the early morning hours and the evening hours when everything in my day-to-day sort of starts to shut down, right? It starts to, the noise isn't so loud, so I start to hear the noises in my own head. And a lot of them have this sort of essence of worry. So let's talk about worry for a little bit. Like, how does it present? How does it look? So when I personally start sensing worry coming through, for me, a lot of it is not based in the present moment, right? Maybe I worry about what's to come tomorrow, or I have a certain problem in my life and I'm trying to conjure up, solution A, B, and C. And, maybe I can try this, or maybe I can take this avenue, and, plotting a path to resolving this worry, right? It's like we're latching on to these solutions for a better outcome in the future, right? These are all, worry is sort of this putting our energy into the future. And it could be a future that may or may not happen, right? How many times have we in our lives worried about something and maybe it never came to pass? Like, whatever we imagined to be the worst case outcome didn't even happen, right? I can think of a lot of times in my own life that that's the case. When we get on this wheel of worrying, it's almost like we're hopping on this roller coaster. And this roller coaster, might start out gentle, but then it just takes off, right? And off we go with like this momentum, this strong momentum, and it sort of keeps us in these loops, I'll digress for a second. I had this one, roller coasters gets me thinking about this one time where my son and I, we went to this amusement park called Phantasialand. It's in Germany. And he really wanted to ride this one roller coaster called Toron. Oh, God. So this thing goes from 0 to like 70 in like a second. And I remember we were waiting in line, and the whole time, like as we got closer to the entrance, I was like, I could just feel my heart pounding out of my chest. I'm not a roller coaster person at all, but I was doing it for him. You know, it was just me and him, and he really wanted to go on this. So I was like, okay, I will face my fear and go on this roller coaster with you. And we get on it, and it's, starts gentle, and I just like closed my eyes because all of a sudden this roller coaster, I've never been on one like it. I'm telling you, it literally, like, the force was like so strong that I couldn't even hold my head up straight. Like, it was like this the whole time. And I just was like, oh my God, I just need to close my eyes and just get through this. And then it gets to this other point on the ride, and it starts slowing down again. I'm like, oh, thank God. I had my eyes closed, so I didn't know where on the track we were. And it starts slowing down, and I'm like, okay, it's almost done. And then it rips forward again, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to make it off this thing. But it finally came to an end, and needless to say, I was sort of like barely walking after that. Oh my God, it was, what a memory. I will never forget it. But anyway, I digress. So, our worries, I kind of see them like that, where they're this like, this force in our lives that just pulls us, takes us forward. And it's almost like we have no control over it, like we're at the mercy of these thoughts and these assumptions that we have in our head, of these, stories that we create. And how do we stop that momentum? How do we get off the roller coaster, right? So what I started realizing, really just in the last week or two, if I'm being honest, is that, and maybe you can relate to this, when I personally worry, in my mind, this is the one thing that I tell myself. If I get through this moment, then all will be well in my life. Like, I just need to get through this moment, and then things will be good. And then eventually I get through that moment, right? But then what happens next? Another worry comes into our life, and we tell ourselves the same thing. If I get through this thing, all will be well. And it really has just recently occurred to me that this has been an ongoing pattern. Why it took me so long to get to this point, I don't know. Things come to us when we're ready to see them, right? As we're doing our healing and, digging into our own shadows, right? They'll surface when they're ready. And I always say that because, if we're not ready to see something or be aware of something, we're just not going to see it. I mean, think of something in your own life. Maybe you met a person and really didn't care for them in the beginning. But then as you got to know them, your perception changed, and then you viewed them in a different light. It's no different than that, right? We're the same with ourselves. We judge ourselves, and when we're ready to see things differently, then, they pop into our awareness, and then we can begin to, transform them. We can begin we have something to work with at that point, right? So, one worry after another. That's where we're at, right? We've come to that realization. I've come to that realization. So then what do we do? Right? Where do we go? How do we get off the roller coaster? How do we stop the momentum of, this sort of moving train in our lives, right? And, I want to talk just a little bit first about where worry maybe lies. Like, what's the sort of root of worry? And, as I was sort of contemplating this, what came up for me was this sense of safety, right? It's rooted in creating safety in our lives. If we have an unknown future ahead of us, bad things can happen. We got to try and make ourselves safe. So worry is this protective mechanism in our lives, and perhaps it's served us up until this point. If this resonates with you, perhaps this is something either you've been working through or it's coming into your awareness now, and maybe it's not serving you anymore, right? So for me, I feel like this worry that I've been sort of tangled up in, right? The momentum, I've been carried with this momentum long enough, and now it's not serving its purpose anymore. Our body, we feel these when we worry. We feel it in our body, we feel it in our emotions, and it's almost like this fight or flight. It's that same thing. We get into this fight and flight sort of mechanism triggered, and this is our way to get through it, right? We're gonna try and offset any bad things happening to us. So we worry and we plot and plan. So what do we do once we recognize that this is something in our lives? Actually, before I go on to that, one thing that's coming to mind is that I want to mention is how our worrying mind can also convince us that this is for our own good, right? So when we have this sort of need to feel safe triggered, our mind, our body, like everything about us will convince us that this is for our own good, this is what we need to do. And I can remember a lot of times where I convinced myself that this was, for my best good. That me plotting out how to get through something, if I don't do this, then who's going to do it for me, right? Who's going to make sure that I get through this safely? And we can be really convincing for ourselves. Now, I'm also I don't want to shoot down, like, there are valid reasons to think about things, right? When we have problems come up in our life. But there's a difference between the energetics of, healthy, purposeful worry, I guess you could call it, and unhealthy, right? So what I'm talking about is the unhealthy. But maybe we want to talk a little bit about distinguishing between the two. And that, I believe, gets into how are we feeling in our body as these worries come up? How are we responding and reacting to them? And I think reaction is going to be the key word, because what worry can do is it can sort of propel us into rash actions, right? We have this worry and then we just run out and we go try to fix it. Like we do things without really thinking or absorbing what's going on. It's our first reaction to solve this problem. Now, this is useful in, let's say, a fire starts in the pan in the kitchen. We have that gut reaction and we, grab the baking soda or whatever, to put out the fire, right? Turn the stove off. That's useful. That's purposeful. So what I'm referring to is perhaps other things that are not so, urgent, immediate, right? Not impending doom. So, our body still takes it in a way that feels very similar to the kitchen fire, right? Even though it's not a kitchen fire. And, what I've been, for myself, doing to sort of start to recognize this and bring my awareness to it is just that, right? When I start feeling worry come up, I feel it a lot in my chest. I feel it like in my upper belly. And, if you just close your eyes and pay attention to what sensations are arising, Maybe you can feel some constriction. Maybe you can feel some heaviness. Maybe you can feel some, sharp stabbing pain. Maybe you feel some tightness in your shoulders. Have you can you recall a time when you were feeling really stressed and you just got a bunch of knots up here, right? We tense lots of muscles in our body when we're feeling nervous or worried about something. And a lot of times it's just unconscious, right? We're unconsciously tensing ourselves. It's creating this sort of hard shell around us, this constriction. So what we can begin to do is to just feel that as it's arising. If you're even if you're not worried in this moment, you can bring yourself back to maybe a moment in your day where you felt that coming up, and just closing your eyes and taking inventory, taking stock. What am I feeling? How is this feeling for me right now? And eventually, as we're doing that, we become more in tune with our body, right? And maybe we can start sensing, oh, this muscle right here feels really tight. And we can sort of breathe into that and consciously, if you go like this with your hand, right, you're consciously moving your muscles. So we can bring awareness to the different muscles and we can consciously, help them to relax, right? We can take some deep breaths and just imagine them relaxing, try to let go of that muscle tension and just begin to relax the body. And so what this does is it helps the body to build a sense of safety. It helps the body learn, because over the years it has learned that that is what's going to help us. So we have to teach the body a different way, right? We have to teach the body that we're safe, there's no danger right now, and it's okay to relax. And this can take some time. The body, if it's been doing this for a long time, which for me it has, it's going to take time for it to learn a new way. It's going to take time for it to learn that things are safe and we don't need to tense up. We don't need to create fear. We don't need to create worry and stress and all these other things. So breathing into it, bring our awareness and try to relax, right? Relax those muscles, relax that tension. What I think is important to note here is that worry is, it's heavily external in a way, right? We see it as something that is maybe arising within us, but it's actually an external. Worry brings it outside. It brings us away from what's going on inside. So by bringing our awareness within us, we bring it back to the internal environment, okay? And that's where transformation occurs. That's where healing occurs. That's where we can begin to work through these things, right? Work through our fears and our worries that come through. So it always circles back to going within, right? And this is how we can begin to create transformation in our lives. Because nobody wants to be in a state of worry all the time, I mean, I imagine if you're watching this and you've gotten this far, that would be the case. I know, the thing with worry is when we're very preoccupied with this energy of worry, right? It's a very dense, sort of heavy energy to have in our lives. And when we can start to release some of that, we create space. We create space for more light in our lives. We create space for our inner wisdom to come through, right? So we're going to be acting from a place of wisdom instead of fear, love instead of fear, okay? But we have to set our intention to create the space. It's not I'm not here to give like a magic bullet to cure worry, right? We have to put the work in. We have to create in our lives, right? We're creative beings and we're here to transform, and that involves us doing some work, doing some healing, right? But this is just some steps that you can take to get started in the process. Just to, start to create room. And you might find that a path opens up, once our awareness is the key. Once we set our awareness on this, it's almost like you're turning a light on and it can't get turned back off. Consciousness, it doesn't work like that. It's not like a light in the room where you can flip a switch, right? It's once we shine a little bit of light on there, it'll just expand. As we put our effort and our intention into it, it'll continue to expand. For me, I feel like breath is an integral part of this because, if you think of the lungs, as we breathe in, it creates this expansion, right? We're filling up the lungs. And what I sense as I'm doing that, as I'm taking some breaths into these different areas that I'm feeling, maybe these triggers from the worry, it also creates expansion in that particular area. So really try to integrate your breath too, and see what it does for you. And I always say that nothing's a one size fits all. So as you're walking your own path and maybe you feel inspired towards something else, or you tweak something a little bit and it fits you better, then great. It's not, healing is very individual to everybody, and even if we're doing the same thing, it's still going to be a little bit different because I'm me and you're you. So really listen to your body and honor what comes forward. If something different comes forward for you, then great, give it a try and see where it goes. See how it helps you, So I think I'm going to end the video here. And yeah, I know if you're struggling with worry, I get it. I really do. And yeah, I also invite you, if there's any topics that you want me to bring forward in future episodes of the Fear Diaries, something you're struggling with or just want a little more, insight about, I'd be happy to do a video on that. So just let me know. Let me know in the comments. And if you ever feel called to get more one-to-one support on your healing path, then I do offer individual shamanic healing. Feel free to reach out. My website is linked in the description below. I'd love to walk this path with you. So anyway, I hope you all have a good day or good night, whatever time you're watching this. And yeah, thank you for being here and have a good night. Bye, guys.